Now, I'm jazzed about getting into this series, 7 Reasons Why the Atheist Might Be Right. And so let me tell you a little bit about where we're going in this series for the next 6 weeks after today. I have been online on Facebook talking to and in person, dealing with people, talking to people who, I really care about. And these are people who are not Christians. They really don't give God much consideration in their lives. And, I do some kind of life with them in the sense I hang out with them. Sometimes I'm trying to reach them for Christ. And so I'm sitting around talking. I'm online on Facebook, and we're going back and forth with an atheist group of people, dialoguing back and forth. Well, what about this, and what about this, and how could God exist if this? So what I did was I had this idea about what are the top 7 things that bug atheists about God, about there being a God, the possibility of a God, or that there is no possibility of a God, of any God. Forget the Christian God for a minute, just any God. It's just rubbish to them. And so I began to compile a list of the 7 toughest questions that Christians would have to answer, and the 7 best arguments that atheists and agnostics have regarding the Christian faith, or God in general, but Christian faith in particular. So we decided that we would tackle these 7 hardest things and come at it from this perspective, that the atheist might be right. That you, though you're a Christian, how would you answer not me, you, how would you answer these tough questions that we're going to address in these next 7 weeks? And so I wanted to jump on one of the biggest today first, and that is the existence of God. They say the existence of suffering and evil proves that God does not exist. It just proves that God doesn't exist. So that's where we're going to go, and what I'm going to do is present their argument, and then I'm going to present my argument, our argument, the Christian's argument, and what it ought to be. How you can be confident as a believer in Jesus that though the atheists have good questions, they actually, and I don't mean this arrogantly, they all fall short. And I'm going to present that, hopefully, skillfully, to some degree, so that those of you here today who may be atheists, or may be agnostics, or may be skeptical of the Christian faith, of there being a God, the God of the Bible, that when you leave, at least what will be removed are questions plaguing your mind about how could that be possible. And so by the end of these 7 weeks, hopefully you'll be able to leave with maybe most all roadblocks removed, and that if you wanted to, you could come to faith in Christ. Now, right now you're saying, it's not for me. I get it. I really do. So what I want to ask of you is just one thing. Just want to ask of you 2. One is this. I want to ask you this. I want to ask you to hang with us for the next 6 weeks after this Sunday. Because I don't want you to leave and go, that question over there was never answered, and neither was that one. I think we'll answer a whole lot of them for the next number of weeks. And you can go to our website and find out what are we going to be talking about, or you can pick up one of our invite cards, and on it, maybe you received one, it tells you each week what we're going to be tackling. Now, next week, I've got a very cool surprise that you don't want to miss, and I'm going to talk about how science says that they've disproven God. We don't need God because science has the answers, and so we're going to tackle that one next week. We're going to tackle the things about evolution and Big Bang and whatnot. So, but it's going to be unique approach. There's going to be a surprise there. All right, so that's next week. But then keep going on, and it's just going to get gooder and gooder and gooder. That's good stuff, all right? All right, so hang with me. That's the first thing for the next 7 weeks. And then I want to invite you to invite somebody with you, because this can change their life. This may be the answer they're looking for. And so let's begin, shall we? All right. So in 2010, a list was compiled of the major disciplines of the sciences. And this list compiled 30 major categories or disciplines of science in the world today. And then somebody took that list of 30 and subcategorized it into over 600 disciplines of sciences. So think about that for a moment. There are somebody, and many people agree with it, you look at the list, you go, that's a science. People dig into these particular nuances of sciences, of the sciences, and that's what they study, that particular field. And so over 600, which is kind of mind-boggling if you think about it. It's impressive. Now, if I were to ask you what percentage of knowledge you think you possess of all knowable things on earth, what percentage of knowledge do you think that you possess right now of all knowable things on earth? What do you think that might be? For instance, oceanography, paleontology, seismology, chemistry, mathematics, linguistics, theology, philosophy, archaeology, eschatology, astronomy, dermatology, physics, molecular biology, astrophysics, botany, zoology, or genetics. I mean, what would you say? What percentage of these things do you actually absolutely know? Well, do you think that you even know 1% of everything knowable on earth? Anybody want to take that one on? I know at least 1% of all of this. I mean, combined knowledge, you know 1%. How about if I was thinking more like 0.00000000001, and that might be high. That might be lofty. That might be a little too much. Now think about this. Light travels at how fast per second? Approximately 186,000 miles per second. That equals to 700 million miles per hour. It's fast, kinda. A little faster than NASCAR. 700 million miles an hour light travels. What? Okay, so here's what I want you to think about for a moment. For light to travel from our Earth to our moon, it takes just 1.3 light seconds. 1.3 light seconds. Now think about this. That is the limit of human exploration. That's it. 1.3 light seconds from Earth to the, that's as far as humanity actually personally has gone. 1.3 light seconds. And to get across just our galaxy called the Milky Way, light has to travel 100,000 years from one end to the other, and that's just one of many billions upon billions upon billions of galaxies. So I ask you the question, how much do you actually think you know? All right, so I got that established. So I personally think, this is my opinion, that it's arrogant for anyone to say emphatically and absolutely, there is no God. Think about this. You would actually have to be God to say there is no God. You would have to be omniscient, all-knowing, and omnipresent, all present everywhere simultaneously in the universe, to actually know God does not exist. Well, when somebody says there is no God, the Bible tells us that God actually says the fool has said that in their heart. However, some people are even more bold than that, and they say it out loud with their mouth. I wonder what God says about that. That we actually announce there is no God. Now, I've been dealing with atheists, and most of them are cordial to me when we're doing this online. Some are not, and I'm not even going to mess with that because all they care about is blasting things that they want to blast. That's them. I think most of the time, not all the time, some atheists or some agnostics, skeptics, have legitimate reasons why they don't believe that God exists, or they're sure that he does. They're pretty sure. But for somebody to say he absolutely doesn't, you'd have to actually be all-knowing, because he could be hanging out on Pluto right now, and you wouldn't know it. So we have to be careful about what we actually state. Now, I think most people say they're atheists. What they're really saying is, I just don't know. I don't think there's a God. I can't say absolutely. But I still want to tackle the questions that atheists present, the statements they present. The atheist argument, let's look at this. Here we can see this on the screen. Why do atheists say there is no God? Well, they say it for many reasons, I suppose, but here is a big reason. The atheist argument is this. First bullet point. If God is truly all-powerful, he could prevent evil. But then we see this. Their next statement is, if God is omniscient, all-knowing, he would know when evil was about to take place, and therefore he could act to stop it. But then we see this. And we wonder. And then the atheist says, if God is morally perfect and benevolent in every way, he would want to prevent evil. But then we see this. Subjugation, slavery, foul, evil, devilish. And so they say, evil exists. And we look at things like this. A tsunami and the destruction. And then they come to the conclusion, therefore God, at least with those characteristics of all-knowing, all-good, all-powerful, does not exist. That God isn't really there. Now, we look at that, you look at that, and you go, yeah. Got some points there. That's pretty strong. What do I say about that? What is there to say about that kind of evil and pain and suffering and injustice in the world today? How could a good God, all-powerful and all-loving, all-benevolent, let that kind of stuff take place? And so let me begin with the atheist's dilemma. The atheist does have a dilemma. Let me begin with a usual question from a typical debate that I have with atheists. And the atheist's question is this. If there is an all-good, all-powerful God, then why does he allow all the evil and injustice in this world? So you've got the atheist, the agnostic, the skeptic looks at this question. Why does God allow them? One of two ways. Here's how they look at it. First, and this is not on the screen, so just listen. They look at that like this. If God is all-powerful, and if he's all-knowing and all-good, he could and should and would prevent evil. Evil still happens, therefore God does not exist. Sounds plausible. Sounds like it's really possible. But is it? And then, if they don't think that way, here's the bigger argument that they have. The way they look at that statement, God is like this, but evil happens. And here's what their other argument is in this, their other question. Since there is senseless evil, why did that happen? What good could come out of that? Senseless evil and injustice. What good did slavery do? What good could the Holocaust? It's senseless. Why did that random act of shooting, blah, blah, take place? Why did the car bombings and people who are just evilly doing things and over in Israel, let's say that you got people with terrorists who are arming themselves with bombs and blowing themselves up at restaurants. Senseless, seeming random acts of evil and injustice. It wasn't right. It wasn't fair. Those people were innocent, whatever the case might be. Could have been someone you know, someone in your family, someone close to you or to me. My best friend got shot in the head. There was a reason for that, though. I know. But there are things that take place. My friend died, 17 years of age. What about my uncle who got hit by a drunk driver when the guy didn't turn on his lights in New York City? He was walking home, 1 block from his home, hit by a drunk driver, knocked out of his shoes, died instantly. What about that? And so the atheist, the agnostic, the skeptic looks at that and they go, come on, man. I see evil, evil, evil. Where's the good? And that's their argument. The atheist argument here on the screen is this, that the universe, the world, seems so cruel and unjust. And I look at it, and I'd pretty much agree, wouldn't you? I mean, look at it. Just turn on the news. Of course, they glorify all that stuff so that they get the ratings. But we get it. It's all out there. It's prevalent, isn't it? And some of it seems so senseless. Why would a good God let that happen? Why would an all-powerful God let that kind of stuff happen? He must not be all-powerful. He must not be all good, or he must not exist. But the Bible tells us he is all-powerful, and he is all good, and he does exist. So does the Christian have a dilemma, or does the atheist have a dilemma? Where should we stand? And we look at this stuff, and we're just, man. All right, so the atheists have these questions, they have these statements, they have these reasons, they have these arguments, and they look super valid. The Christian's answer ought to be something of this nature. The Christian should answer this way. Number one, to the atheist, to the agnostic or the skeptic. Number one, first bullet point, where did you or anyone get the idea of just and unjust? If there is no God and we are all random evolutionary beings that happen to evolve, where did the idea that there is something that is evil come to begin with? How do we know what evil is unless we know there's a good? How do we know something's unjust unless we innately, inborn, kind of inherently know there is something just? That is the first question that the atheist, the unbeliever, the non-believer, the agnostic, the skeptic, the doubter, it's okay to ask these questions, but you have to answer that one. The second thing is this, that just a statement from me is this. A person cannot call a line crooked unless they know a line is straight. So, third bullet point is you can't have a that's wrong, unless you have a that's right. So the question is, where'd that come from? Why does every human being, why is it universally known that something is absolutely unjust and wrong? Why could you look at those pictures and go, that's wrong? Oh, that makes me so mad. Why is that if there is no God? If there's no transcendent moral being that actually superimposed his will and put inside of you a conscience to determine that that's wrong. Now, can people petrify their conscience? Can they sear their conscience? Absolutely. It's like Mikey in the cookie jar. At first, can't take the cookie, but then he takes a cookie and takes another, and soon he's got chocolate all over his mouth. It was really, his conscience was bothering him to begin with, but at the end of the batch, it's not bothering him at all anymore. He feels sick now. We can sear our conscience, and people do that all the time. If the atheist says, it's just my own private idea that that's wrong, just my own opinion, then their argument against God collapses too. Because then they can't bring God into it. So here's a question. How would the skeptic or the atheist or the agnostic know something or anything is evil unless they have this intrinsic reference for what is good? When a person, any human being, sees something and they say, that's good, that's right, or that's unjust, why do they know that? How come that's universal? Why is there a worldwide or universal knowledge that something like rape is wrong? If we're all just accidents, then it's not. That's why evolution can't win. Because if you're just evolved, then we're all just accidents anyhow. And you're just here by chance. You just kind of broke through. Survival of the fittest, whatever the case might be, step on others, claw your way to the top, get what you can because you die and just go back into the ground. So there is no morality at all if you believe in evolution. morality does not matter at that point. So rape to the evolutionist should not be wrong. Neither should murder, and neither should child abuse. Neither should stealing somebody else. How about this one? Adultery. How come those even who practice adultery know what's wrong? They do it and hide. They hide. Why? They do it in dark places at nighttime and when nobody knows. Supposedly, why is that innately wrong? Why is that innately, there's a sense of I'm doing wrong. Why is that? If we're just carbon beings, if we're just carbon life forms, and there is no God, then where'd that morality intrinsically come from? You see, there can be no evil to the non-believer, to the agnostic, to the atheist. There can be no evil if we don't have a standard of good and morality and justness. There can't be injustice. There's no justice. So where did the sense, the worldwide, universal sense of justness come from, if not from a transcendent being who caused that to be born in every human? Animals don't have that. A lion can go kill this and it's not murder, can go cohabitate and hang out with all these lionesses. It's not adultery, just for you and for me. And that's because you are a moral being, according to the Bible, given morals by God, inborn inside of you. You can't get rid of it. You can suppress it. You can sear your conscience. You can actually petrify your conscience by abusing it time and again. And we all have practiced that. But it's still there. Could it be that there is a universal right and a universal good as part of the conscience in every human being? I think that's pretty clear. I don't think anybody really disputes that at all. So the fact is one of two things for the atheist or the agnostic, and that's this: that all evil and injustice, you or I, we seem to notice, is just a personal opinion, but not a universal truth. And if so, then their argument of God for allowing evil collapses. Because he didn't allow it. It's just your personal opinion. Because it's not universal. But it is. So that's got to be one argument, but that falls. Number two, if all evil and injustice that he or she notices is a universal reality, then it presupposes that someone innately planted that in all of our consciousnesses. Is that a word? It is today. Therefore, there's got to be a supreme moral lawgiver. Or at least the evidence points that way. Otherwise, where'd it come from? Because the truth is, bacteria can't grow with new information to put something incorporeal, like a conscience, in life forms. It's got to be done from the outside in. There's no new DNA, no new information in the genetic code for you to gain a conscience. Hey, where does that come from? It's not there. There's a lot of problems with being an atheist. There's a lot of problems with actually being somebody who just demands that there can't be a God. There is no God. Now, if you said, based on the evidence that I see, it's hard for me to believe in God, I get you. But please do not be arrogant and say there is no God. Again, you'd have to be God to know that. So just be wise in your usage of words, is number one. As we'll see in this upcoming series, that there's going to be ample evidences, valid, solid evidences for the case for Christianity. The case for Jesus being who he said he was. The case for the Bible being the true word of God. The case for God being a God who's in existence, the only true living God, the God of the Bible. We're going to see that in this series. And I'm not going to try to jam it down your throat. What I really want to do is present and let you determine. I'm not going to try to twist your arm and sway you with tactic. You're too smart for that anyhow. But if you want to be honest, let's be honest then. Let's throw out all the cards on the table. Let's not be scared of any question or any answer and deal with it. And let's just see who comes out on top. And I don't mean the Christian or the atheist. I just mean, who, meaning does God come out on top or is his non-existence come out on top? Where do we go? I think we should look at it hard, because if you care about what happens to your job tomorrow and your family next week and next month and next year, shouldn't you care about your eternity? Shouldn't you care about what's going to happen after the grave? Jesus talked about it, and he's the only one I know who kind of like died and came alive again to live forever. So he's got some things to say about it. And I think we should know, just at least give room for some other things to, be there that we're not knowledgeable about. Now remember, of all the things on earth, all the sciences, how much do you really know? And then if you can only get 1.3 light seconds from here to the moon, and that's the extent of our human, that we've actually been there in the whole universe, there's a lot to learn, man. A lot we don't know. And there's a lot I don't know. There's so much that we don't know, all of us. This isn't just Christian, non-Christian. This is, believe or not, atheist or theist. This is everybody. We're just, quite ignorant compared to everything that's going on out there. All right, so actually what I want to say is that the fact that there is evil, listen to me carefully, this is a crazy statement, but it's true. Based on all I just said, the fact that there is evil proves the case for God. That's because one can only know evil and injustice if they already know there's a right and an injustice. You can't, let me say it this way. You can have good without evil. It's going to happen in heaven. You can have good without evil, but you cannot have evil without good. You wouldn't know what evil was unless there's a good standard to compare it to. Again, we have no way of knowing that something is really evil unless there's a God who established the moral law by which we can judge it to be evil. Also, listen to this idea regarding this is important, the senseless evil and injustice in the world today. Now, a lot of you would look and go, okay, I know some things happen because blah, blah, blah. But what about the stuff that's senseless evil or senseless injustice? Now, this is a lot harder to tackle. What about the stuff that absolutely makes no sense? It's like, why did God, if there is a God, let that happen? And many of us have been through difficult times, some of us serious tragedies. But let me read to you what author and PhD and philosophy professor Ronald Nash says. He asks, and I quote, "What properties must a human being, possess? What properties must any being, B-E-I-N-G, what properties must any being possess in order to know that some evils really are gratuitous or unnecessary or unwarranted? What knowledge, what properties must that being possess to know that something that is unjust, seemingly, or super, random, unwarranted evil in our eyes, unnecessary, really is that way?" He goes on to say, it certainly appears as though one such property must be omniscience, all-knowingness. It would seem then that the only kind of being who could know whether something gratuitous, unnecessary, or unwarranted evil exists would be God. But if the only being who could know whether such evil exists is God, there surely are problems in arguing that the existence of unnecessary and unwarranted evils are a defeater for the existence of God. Let me summarize, since I didn't read it very well. What I want to say to you is that he's saying, how do you know it's senseless evil? Unless you're all-knowing yourself. How do you know it's entirely unwarranted and unnecessary and absolutely senseless? There's no sense anywhere in the universe for that, some good coming out of that. How do you know? Unless you're omniscient yourself. Unless you're all-knowing yourself. So let me throw this out at you, Katie. Your 4-year-old does not understand why you demand that they cannot have chocolate cake for dinner every night of the week. And they think you're evil. They just think you're just flat out, I got an evil parent. Now, you know I'm kidding. I'm being facetious. But you understand, okay, look, Dad and Mom have far greater knowledge than the little munchkin, right? Do you not think that the omnipotent, omniscient, all-knowing God knows just a little bit more than you do? Why can't that kid go play in the street? The other kids are playing in the street. But maybe you know just a little bit more than that little munchkin. Why can't they ride their bike in the middle of traffic? You do. I went on the side of the street down North Landing the other day, Friday. Rode my bike all the way. I thought I was going to get killed 4 times. I wouldn't let my kids do that. But I took a risk. But what if they said, Dad, you do it. You're a hypocrite and you're evil. Yeah, I might have a little more skill. Maybe not. But I don't want you to take that risk. And the point being is that God knows far more than we do. So you can't actually say that something is gratuitous when it's evil and it seems to be senseless and unwarranted, unnecessary, unless you're omniscient, all-knowing. So the truth is, there is this, it falls. So, by the way, there is another field of study that I failed to mention in the sciences. It's the field of scatology, the study of excrement. So, an atheist was seated on a plane next to a little girl, and he turned to her, and he said to her, this is just a joke, do you want to talk? Flights go quicker if you strike a conversation, if you strike one up with your fellow passenger. And she said, she just started to read her book, and she said, well, what would you want to talk about? And he said, I don't know, how about why there is no God, or why there is no heaven or hell, or why there is no life after death? And he smiled smugly, right? And she said, okay. She said, those could be interesting topics, but let me ask you a question first. A horse, a cow, and a deer all eat the same stuff, grass, right? Right, okay. Yet a deer excretes little pellets, while a cow turns out a flat patty, and a horse produces clumps. Why do you suppose that is? And the atheist, visibly surprised by this little girl's intelligence, thinks and says, I have no idea. To which the little girl replied, do you really feel qualified to discuss God and heaven and hell or life after death when you don't know crap? And then she went back to reading her book. All right, somebody sent that to me, and I just had to. I don't even use that word in daily language, but all right, so, all right. Now, all right, I know some of you are going to use that tomorrow, the water cooler. If God created only good things, we see here on the screen, if God created only good things, then where did evil come from? Where did evil come from? Well, if God is all good, if he created only good things, how can something evil come from something that's perfectly good? So long ago, St. Augustine answered this by noting that one of the good things that God made was free choice, and that we all enjoy free choice. No one marches against freedom, but even if somebody did, it was because they enjoyed their freedom to do the march, right? So because we're free moral agents, evil's possible. Where did evil come from? Evil is not a thing like a pile of evil over there, go to it and dig in. It's not like that. Evil is simply this. Evil happens, listen, you can see on the screen, evil happens when any person chooses to think and thus act and live independently of God. Okay, let me back up. If God created you, if he did, let's put a first-class conditional clause on that. Since God created you, he's the maker, he's the author, he's the originator. He has first dibs on you then, let's just say. He has the right and the responsibility to say, follow me. This is what I made you for, do this. But when I go no as a free moral agent, that is evil. Every single time I say no, that is evil. It's not just sinful, it's evil. According to the Bible's definition. It's evil because I'm acting independently of my Creator. I stiff arm him, don't want him, thrust him from me. No, get out of my life. That's evil. So where did evil come from? If God is all good and all perfect, evil comes because God gives you a free moral choice. You're a free being. You're not a puppet. You're not a marionette. You're not an android. You're not a robot. You're not mechanical. You're a free moral agent, and free moral agents abuse their gifts all the time. So you have a choice. God had a choice. Either don't make you free, and thus you would be a marionette or a robot or a puppet or whatever you want to call yourself, but mechanical. And there's no such thing as being free when you are not free. So you have a choice right now. Would you rather be free or just have no freedom? I think everybody would probably choose, let me be free and do what I want. And God lets you. And because he lets you, there is the possibility for evil to exist. The result is that we live in a sin-riddled, fallen world where free creatures are capable of free choices. And these free choices can bring death, disease, destruction, disaster. Our free choices. If somebody hit me on the side of the road the other day while I'm riding my bike, my family and you could not say, why did God let that happen? Here's the answer, because Steve did. He was an idiot. He should never have taken that risk. But you can't blame God. Why did my best friend get shot in the head? Because we used to go around doing things we shouldn't have done when I was younger. And that's why he died. Why does evil happen to you? There's probably 100 different reasons it could. But you know you bring some on yourself. Come on, you know it. Evil happened and happens because we all have acted and still act in evil ways, living and doing life independently of God's ways. So, next we have to answer, and I'm just about done. If God is an all-powerful, all-good God, why is evil not destroyed? Why doesn't God just get rid of the stinking stuff? Don't we all hate it? Yeah. Why don't you just get rid of it? Destroy it. Answer number one. Pay attention. This is super important because it involves you. If God destroyed all evil now, he'd have to destroy you and me. And everyone else with a chance to know him. See, if God just destroyed the terrorists that we don't like, say, well, I'm going to destroy them because they're evil and they're doing evil things, then to be a just God, he'd have to destroy you and me. I don't want to go yet. I'm not ready to. Got other things I want to do. Play a little more cornhole. Hang out with my family. Cook out. Go to church. Do stuff with peeps. And when God's time is done, I'll go to heaven. Even though I don't understand all that. Here's my point. God is a just God. And he doesn't get rid of evil in the world because he have to get rid of every human who's alive right now. Because we all have done and do evil things, act independently of God. So to be just, if he stops the terrorists, he's got to stop me. Every single time. And if he did, I would no longer be free. And neither would you. But God already determined he's going to give us that gift of freedom. And if he stopped evil, he would have to stop everyone from actually coming to know him, and he would not have time. They would not have time to know God because he'd stop it. And thus, in one sense, that would be evil on God's part. And God doesn't act that way. He doesn't act evil, so he's not going to destroy everybody because he's still waiting for that right time, which he only knows, when he'll bring everything to a culmination and a consummation. The second reason that God doesn't destroy all evil is because he's not looking to destroy it, he's looking to defeat it. Watch now. Number two, because we are truly finite in our knowledge of nearly everything, there is a possibility that the things we deem as evil, God could actually and would actually bring about a good that is worth the evil that we go through. We do this with our kids all the time, as I mentioned before. You love your kids, certainly, but then why do we sometimes ourselves not intervene when they're going through pain and things that they would see? Why did you let that happen, Dad or Mom? You had to go through that because of this. We do it as parents. We don't keep them from falling every time they're going to fall when they're little. We take the training wheels off the bike. We let them drive the car at 16. Huh? Come on. I'm not sure that's a good idea, but you do it. Joy said, Dad, I want to start driving. I said, you're not ready. Are you allowed to? Yeah, by law, but not my law. You're not ready. So I love her. She's not ready. I'm saying that for your sake. Trust me. All right. So, number 3, we bring evil on each other because we're all morally sinful. Where did evil come from? We bring it on each other because we're all morally fall short. Fourthly, we bring evil on ourselves. We risk driving. We risk putting things in our body. How many of you put bad stuff? No, don't raise your hand. We put bad stuff inside, and we wonder, how come I'm not doing good? Some of you live on 10 cups of coffee a day. I'm not sure that's good. Just a thought. Some of you drink way too much alcohol. Probably not a good idea. Some of you smoke. Probably not a good idea. Would you go to hell for any of those? No. Jesus paid for every sin you'd ever do. If I don't take care of my body and I become 500 pounds, he still loves me. I'm not going to hell because I'm a glutton or because I have a thyroid problem or whatever. I'm just fat. It's okay. It's okay. But is it, listen, I go to the hospital way too much to visit people who have degenerative diseases. What are we putting in us? We drink soda like God wants us to drink water probably. And we're just downing that stuff. I'm no expert, I'm no scientist. I'm not telling you what to do or how to live. You do whatever you want. I'm just saying, where does evil come from? Sometimes we do it to ourselves. Are you following me? Do you get it? Don't blame it on God. Why did he let that happen? Because you did. Because I did. If God never told me to go fly in a plane, but if it crashes, I can't blame God. He didn't say in the Bible, thou, Steve, on this date shall go flying in a plane. That was a risk that I chose to take. And every time you go on 64, 264 out of your neighborhood, Frodo, it's a dangerous world out there. Some of you get that next week. One day in God's perfect time, evil will be defeated. Just read the end of the book, Revelation 21 and 22. Read it for yourself. I read it this morning. Read it for yourself. So here's what Christians believe, and I'm done. Number 1, here's what Christians believe. Number 1, God is all-powerful, and he can defeat evil. Number 2, God is all-loving and good, and he will defeat evil. And number 3, therefore, evil will surely and fully be defeated. Finally and fully. Because God is who he said he was. Remember, evil, in fact, is one of the most powerful evidences for God, because without the existence of God, the idea of evil becomes unintelligible. So I want to leave you with this thought. Rid yourself of the illogical thought that God cannot exist because there's evil. And instead, as you leave today, I want you to ponder this. If there is no God, why is there so much good? And I close. Let's pray. Father, thank you so very much for helping us to understand a little bit more this idea of suffering and injustice and the evil in the world, and how that is not incompatible with your existence. It's incompatible with your nature in the sense that you're not a God of evil. But because you've given us moral choices and freedoms, we are people who take that freedom, and sometimes we, maybe more than we should by far, just abuse it. And we pay the price for it. I pray for that one who's maybe an atheist here today, or maybe they're a skeptic or an agnostic, that they will just go another step closer to the idea of the cross of Jesus because some of the roadblocks maybe have been removed today. And I thank you for that. I pray that you'll continue to teach us in the next 6 weeks in powerful ways the real reasons why we're here and how we can answer the difficult questions that atheists ask. Thank you for that in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen.